guys, welcome back to 428 Shibuya Scramble. This is TJ Gamer Girl signing on. So, last episode, we found out Toyama was alive. We have until 7 o'clock to get all the articles done. And we are on our way to the SOS hangout to get an interview with them. Hopefully. I'm expecting more trouble. The three ran long and hard after leaving the cafe. If the proofreading deadline was 7 o'clock, then they needed to finish up with SOS by 6:30 at the latest. The game's hangout was in Ura Harajuku. Running all the way there on foot was going to eat into too much of their time. The traffic was at a near standstill for some reason, and there wasn't a taxi in sight. "How long do you plan on running like this?" Katayama called out, panting. "Just take a look at the road! With this traffic, there's no point in hailing a cab!" Even Minorikawa was feeling the time pressure now. "We're just gonna have to keep running until the road clears." "What?" Katayama wailed. "Stop your whining! Just keep quiet and stick with me!" He'd finally gotten Toyama to find his willpower again. Next month's issue would come out on time, and there's no way some printer guy was going to mess that up now. But the traffic showed no signs of abating. Catching a cab wasn't going to be an option. Fighting an ever louder echo of despair, Minorikawa kept up his desperate headlong rush. Still, there were limits to how far the mind could push the body before exhaustion set in. As they were running across a pedestrian overpass, Chiaki slipped and took a nasty fall. She skinned her knee hard enough to draw blood. "Hey, you!" Minorikawa snapped at Katayama. "Don't just stand there! Help the poor girl already!" Katayama scurried over to Chiaki. I'm sorry, Mr. Mino. Chiaki's voice bubbled with suppressed tears. Maybe it was cruel to make her run with her computer all the way to Harajuku. But the copy for our interview still needed to be looked over. They couldn't just leave her here. Minorikawa hesitated, undecided. Even at a full run, they wouldn't make it in time. And with traffic the way it was, there was nothing they could do. Have Katayama consulted his pocket watch. Exactly 1 hour remaining. Damn it! Minorikawa raged. What do we do? Relentlessly, the clock ticked on. Bad ending? No, to be continued! I was actually hoping that would be a bad ending. Alright. Let's get Kenji Osowa's keep out taken care of. Osowa's phone rang and Minorikawa's phone number popped up on the LCD display. The reporter must have finished looking into the matter Osowa had asked about. "Mr. Osowa, sorry to keep you waiting. How'd it go?" "Well, I looked into the background of that story you asked about, and I learned who it was your wife was dating." "Who was it?" Osowa asked immediately. There was a brief pause. "Mamoru Tanaka." "I see." Finally, he had proof positive of a relationship between I and Tanaka. Now more than ever, it was no time to waver. No matter how painful the reality was, it was also true that if they hadn't been dating, there would probably be no way of saving Maria. "So," Minorikawa said, "what was this big thing about disrupting the power balance of the world all about?" "There's something I need to take care of on my end first. Once I'm finished, I'll tell you everything." "Yeah, that's fine. Things are pretty hectic on my end right now anyway." Also, I had expected Minorikawa to put up more of a fight. He figured a reporter for 4-Star General Gossip would be a bit more persistent. "Oh, by the way, there was one other thing I wanted to tell you, Mr. Osowa." Osowa could practically sense the finger pointing his way from the other end of the line. "Don't be too angry with your wife. All too often in this world, people let their anger get in the way of solving their problems." "You may have a point. Also, I'll let out a wry chuckle. Alright then, I'll call you back later. Also, I found Ai standing by herself in the yard. She kept her back to him as he approached. May I have a moment? He asked quietly. What? She didn't bother to turn around. There's something important I need to talk to you about. I'm not in the mood right now. Please, I realize you're upset about Tanaka's death, but at the mention of Tanaka's name, I slowly shook her head. Don't. Just tell me what you want. Hurry up and get to the point. Also, I tried to move closer to her, but she pointedly kept her distance. I'd rather not be, insensitive. There was something also I needed to hear for himself before this went any further. Were you in love with Tanaka? What are you talking about? Osawa frowned. Why did you marry me? He asked. You've got to be kidding. This is the important discussion you wanted to have. Did you ever love me? I let out a joyless chuckle. Love? I'm amazed to even hear the word leave your lips. There was a note of challenge in her voice. Let me ask you the same question. Did you ever love me? To be honest, I married you because I thought my daughters needed a mother. Wow. I let out a weary sigh. Some of the combative tension left her shoulders. That really is honest, she said. So I guess I should be honest too. I married you because my father asked me to. He wanted to chain you down so you didn't leave for some other company. And you were okay with marrying someone for something like that? For something like that? You really have no idea how much you're worth, do you? The value of one woman's life versus the potential profits your research would bring in? There's no comparing the two. If it meant that Okushi Pharmaceutical would monopolize your talents, then what did it even matter what I wanted for myself? There was something akin to desperation in Ai's words. And so you sent me those threatening emails too? What? I looked at him in shock. He knew he'd guessed correctly. You would go that far, just to keep me tied to your father's business? That's right. I would. I bit down on her lip hard. But what would you even know about how I feel? I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I shook her head vehemently. I'm not the victim here. You say that, but isn't it because of me that you and Tanaka weren't able to stay together? I began to tremble. Her secret was out. When did you figure it out? She asked. Earlier today. That tie clip. Right. Not the sort of gift one gives to one's husband's coworker, is it? Even if it was a listening device. I's smile was bitter with self-deprecation. Also, I couldn't help but pity her. Even Tanaka must have suspected that she placed the company's profit above all else, if she'd go to such lengths to protect its interests. It was like she'd given up her entire life just for that. Well, she said, aren't you angry? Also, I just shook his head. Could you tell me just one thing, though? He asked. Did Tanaka ever tell you what his lab password was? His password? I needed to get the antiviral out of the lab. I flinched at the suggestion. To get it out? What are you thinking? That belongs to the company. I just need one dose to save Maria. Please, if you know, please tell me. I don't know it. Ai's voice was barely a whisper. Also, I looked at his wife right in the eye. You're telling the truth. I am. I see. Then, do you have any idea what number he might have used for the password? I shook her head silently, then turned her back to her husband once more. Tanaka hadn't given Ai his password. Also, his last chance had gone up in smoke. He let out a long, shaky breath and shut his eyes. Was it true? Was there nothing more he could do? Another keep out? What? Uh... What? Is there... Okay, 1 second. I am utterly confused. I had to go back to an earlier choice with Minorikawa, and it opened up the keep out for Achi. The workroom door slowly eased open. Achi was too shocked for words. The girl who entered looked just like Hitomi. Maria! Hitomi! Achi blinked in bewilderment. It was almost as if Hitomi were standing in front of a mirror. The two girls looked so similar. Maria, thank goodness you're all right. I'm so sorry I had you worried. Maria was safe, Achi realized. At last, he'd managed to fulfill his duty. How did you manage to get out of the storeroom? Daisuke had gone pale. Tell me, Maria said sharply. Who was it who came up with this kidnapping plan? Suddenly, Daisuke shoved Maria aside and lunged for Hitomi. Stanley made a move to stop him, but before he could intervene, the older man had a hold on Hitomi, pressing something that looked like a flashlight up against her neck. Dad? Achi started toward him, but Stanley held up his hand. Don't move. That's a stun gun. If he zaps her in the neck, it could kill her. You know your stuff, Daisuke said. You deal in American electronics? No, I do this for a living. Stanley drew his gun in an instant, taking aim at Daisuke's forehead. Wait, hold on! Achi interposed himself between Stanley and his father. Dad, let Hitomi go. You need to stop this nonsense. Achi walked slowly toward his father, a pleading look in his eyes. Nonsense? Which one of us is talking nonsense here? You don't know what's going on. If you knew everything, then you'd be helping me. What do you mean, everything? With this girl's heart, we can save Suzune. Dad, who was it exactly that told you that? Daisuke did not reply. I asked you a question. Who was it that put this crazy idea into your head? A foreign organ trafficker I met at the hospital. Most like either one of the... No, organ trafficker? Alphard is a weapons dealer. Organ trafficker. Stanley let out a snort. A likely story. It's true! I was suspicious at first myself, Daisuke said stubbornly. But I couldn't just sit around and wait for Suzune to die. And after talking to him about her rare blood type and all the difficulties in performing a transplant, he promised he'd do everything in his power. Daisuke's hands were trembling. Tears welled up in his vacant, bloodshot eyes. Then a while later, he got back in touch and told me he'd found a potential match. Someone with the same blood type as Suzune, and roughly the same age. But then he told me that the girl was still alive. And so what was the point? Her heart might be a match for Suzune, but it didn't matter if we couldn't get our hands on it. And I said that, but then the man told me. He told you what? Achi bit his lip. He told me to abduct her and turn her over to him. After that, he'd find a way to make it all work. At last, Daisuke had confessed. Now Achi had to try and come to grasp with the truth he just heard. I had to do something, his father continued vehemently. I had to abduct this girl and see things through. I just couldn't take it. Kozune had already been taken from me. The thought of losing Suzune, too. I had to make sure I didn't fail. So, it was this organ trafficker who came up with the kidnapping scheme then, Stanley said. He kept his gun aimed at his target. Daisuke nodded. Describe him for me. He was tall, had black hair, spoke fluent Japanese. Stanley raised an eyebrow at that. Achi wondered if he had some idea who it might be. And taking Maria Osawa hostage in order to lure out Hitomi. That was his idea as well. Yes, that's right. I allowed his computer to gain access to my surveillance camera system as well. But then, this morning, I got a call from the hospital saying Suzune's condition was critical. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to help my girl right away. And then Daisuke cut himself off, reaffirming his grip on his stun gun. I was looking at the surveillance monitor, and I saw a detective I happened to know. He was right next to this girl here, and so I decided to ask him. I knew if I did, he wouldn't refuse. He could never refuse a request from me. And that was the man with the cane? Achi asked. His voice was low and hoarse. Yes. I was giving him directions while I followed you on the monitors. Dad, you need to let go of Hitomi now. There's no point to this. Achi took another step closer to his father. There is a point. If I kill this girl here and now, your sister can get the surgery she needs. But even Achi knew that things couldn't possibly work out that way. His father had grown so desperate to help Suzune that he lost all sense of judgment. Why, Achi? Why won't you help me? Don't you want to save Suzune? Daisuke made a pathetic sight. And yet his desperation to save his child was so palpable it was heart-rending. Achi thought back to that time he'd laid his father out when sparring. No matter how pathetic he may have looked, Achi had always felt that sense of paternal love from him. You're not going to be able to talk him down, Stanley murmured. Achi shook his head. Stanley, he said, lower your gun. Tears were welling up in his eyes. Please, lower your gun. Hearing the determination in Achi's voice, Stanley quietly complied. Achi stepped up to Daisuke, getting a firm grip on his father's slender shoulder. Dad, of course I want to help Suzune. Then why are you trying to stop me? Dad, do you think this is what she'd want you to do? Daisuke's face fell. Did Suzune ask for this, Dad? Did she tell you to take someone else's heart so that she could live longer? Did she, Dad? Suddenly the fight seemed to ebb from Daisuke's body. The stun gun hung limply in his hand. If Suzune asked me to go and get someone's heart for her, I wouldn't object. I'd help her, just like she wanted. I wouldn't let you bear these crimes by yourself. But that's not what this is it? Suzune would never ask us to do something like this. Would she? By now, tears were streaming down Achi's cheeks. He knew that his father thought about Suzune more than he thought about anyone else. And so he should know full well that she would never want this. Suzune is not like me. She's smart, she's kind, and she'd never be happy about taking someone else's heart. Even if it saved her life, I'm sure she'd never accept that. She wouldn't be able to live with it knowing something so horrible had happened to someone else for her sake. Isn't that the Susanne we know? Daisuke's cheeks were smeared with tears now as well. But then we're not going to be able to help her. The sound of father and son weeping echoed through the workroom. Maybe so. Maybe we won't. That's better than the misery and suffering she'd have to live with. Daisuke slumped to his knees on the floor, collapsing like a crumbling mound of sand. Hitomi, freed from his grip, stood motionless. There were tears in her eyes, too. You're such an idiot, Dad. Such a complete, utter idiot. Sobbing, Achi embraced his father. There was a sudden thud from near the door. Everyone turned to look. Maria had crumpled to the floor, and a newcomer had appeared. At some point, Kanan had silently entered the room. Now she cradled Maria in her arms. Standing in the doorway was a man Achi didn't recognize, his face pale. "Stay back!" Kanan shouted at Achi when he tried to approach. It looked like Maria had fallen unconscious. Achi's heart was racing in his chest. An eerie silence fell over the room. For several seconds, no one said a word, their eyes all fixed on Maria. Finally, Kanan looked up, her face ashen. It's starting. I was genuinely starting to cry there. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, let's get Kano's thing taken care of. The to keep out. After the young man's desperate pleading, the other fellow, apparently his father, finally gave in. He released his hold on Hitomi. The tension in the room was replaced by a solemn air of gravitas. Seeing father and son weeping as they spoke made Kano think back to his conversation with Tatano before the stakeout. What was it in people that drove them to do such horrible things? Sometimes it was the desire to save the ones they loved. Even such a heartfelt human emotion could drive someone to wrongdoing. Why? Why did people have to be like that? A sudden thud snapped Kano out of his musings, and an instant later, Kanan hurried past him into the workroom. Maria had collapsed onto the floor, and now Kanan was beside her. In a panic, Kano rushed into the workroom as well. "Stay back!" Kanan shouted as the others tried to huddle around the fallen girl. Please don't be what I think this is. Had the virus gone symptomatic? 2 hours ago, Stanley had told Kano that Maria was infected. He'd also said that her symptoms wouldn't develop for another 4 hours. Shouldn't they still have 2 more hours to go? Maria looked like she was dead, but her eyes closed, her body motionless. Hitomi tried to approach despite Kanan's warning. "Maria!" she cried. "Maria, what's wrong?" Kano held his arms wide to hold her back. "Your sister's been infected with the Ua virus." "The Ua virus?" Hitomi's face went pale. "Hey," Kano said to Kanan. "Should you really be that close? If she's developed symptoms." But Kanan didn't move from Maria's side. She calmly rested her hand on the other girl's forehead. "There's no fever," she said. "And there's no blood coming from her ears. No lymph swelling. I'll be alright. She hasn't gone symptomatic yet. In that case, why did she collapse? Hitomi asked. I'm not sure yet. Whatever the case, if we don't get her that antiviral, she's done for. Then we have to get her to the lab right away, Hitomi said. She was trembling with anxiety. No, that's not an option. Kano's tone was grave. You may already be aware, Miss Osawa, but without a password, we can't access the antiviral storage. But when I went there, my father and Mr. Tanaka. Mamoru Tanaka is dead. Murdered. What? She stared at him uncomprehensively. No, that can't be true. He was a member of a crime syndicate. It's possible they killed him in order to silence him. So then, there's no way to save my sister? There was a hollow look in Hitomi's eyes. No, I won't accept that. Why? Why can't we help her? But no one had an answer. Kano gritted his teeth and hung his head. Why did it have to come to this? He'd come this far, but there was nothing he could do, and he hated himself for it. I'll go to the laboratory. It was Kanan. Electronic lock breaking is my specialty. Wait, the unman Achi spoke up suddenly. So you're a martial arts badass, but your specialty is lock breaking. He looked positively dumbstruck. Kanan ignored him, thinking out loud. Brute force, side channel, shortcut. Given the situation, I think I have to go with side channel. Side channel? Stanley asked. Where's your equipment? One of the lab's PCs will suffice. I could connect to a special server from the net. I don't really understand the stuff you're talking about, Achi said, but I'll trust you to handle this. I mean, you did risk your life to save Hitomi from that minivan explosion and all. Kanan nodded. I have to warn you in advance, though. Cryptanalysis can take hours and still yield no results. I can't guarantee I'll be able to get the doors unlocked before Maria develops symptoms. I understand, Hitomi said. Achi nodded too. No one present had any objections. All of a sudden, there was a curious sound from somewhere in the room. What's that? Kano asked. What's making that noise? He looked around the workroom. That's my computer. Daisuke hurried to his desktop. The bank of monitors, which had been displaying surveillance footage from around Shibuya, had all gone black. What the hell? What's going on, Dad? Achi joined his father, staring at the computer screens. It's all gone. The camera footage. It's been deleted. Daisuke blinked in disbelief. Now then, it seems our main cast has all been assembled. A man's voice, distorted by a voice modulator, suddenly emerged from the computer speakers. Most likely Alphod. A moment later, the monitors all began to display a view of the inside of the workroom. Dad, what the hell is this? Someone's broken through our firewall. They've hijacked the surveillance camera system. The color drained from Daisuke's face as he looked at the screens. Where were they filming us from? Kano asked, scanning inside of the room. He used the image on the monitors to guess where the camera might be located. Over here? The lens of a camera atop the computer monitor glimmered like an eye. It was a miniature camera, used for web conferencing and the like. And now that Maria and Hitomi are both there, you've probably surmised the situation at hand. And so I offer a proposal. The laboratory password, in exchange for Hitomi's blood. Realizing now that it was Alphard's voice they were hearing, everyone in the room froze. At 7 o'clock, roughly 1 hour from now, see that Hitomi Osawa is waiting at the Scramble intersection outside Shibuya Station just like this morning. Unless, of course, you were feeling particularly confident. You do have Kanan with you. Perhaps you'd care to take a gamble on her lock-breaking skills instead. Kanan clucked her tongue in frustration. Alphard had known exactly what the plan was. Of course, if Kanan isn't able to get the door open in time, what will you do then? Maria should die, yes. But that's not all. You don't agree to my offer? I have the means of creating another Maria. And a third. These infectees will spread the virus through Tokyo. And the death toll will likely number in the hundreds of thousands. So do think carefully before you decide. Alphard's voice was chillingly matter-of-fact. I will appear at the rendezvous in person. After all, it wouldn't do for the star of the show to miss the final curtain. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you then. Silence fell. Then the images on the computer monitor returned to normal. The surveillance camera footage came back online as well. Daisuke promptly yanked out his Ethernet cable and slammed his fist on the keyboard. Damn it! There was a hole in the firewall. I'll have to redo my security from the ground up. Good call, Kanan said calmly. We can't win this if our intel keeps getting leaked. Stanley pursed his lips in consternation. What do we do? Kano asked him. Do we give in to his demands? I mean, do we really expect he's just going to blithely show up like that? He's practically, begging for us to come catch him. There had to be some deeper plan at work. If it means saving my sister, I'll do it. Hitomi was resolute. No, Stanley said. You can't. What? Why not? Because if you do, you'll be killed. What? Hitomi's voice caught her in the throat. With the antivirus still present in your body, a week after the fact, you're too much of a liability for Alphard to just let go. He's right. Don't do it, Achi exclaimed. Hitomi, you can't go. Even still, I want to do it. Hitomi stared defiantly at Stanley. You still want to go even knowing that you'll be killed. I can't just sit here and hope that Kanan will be able to pull this off, she said. I want to do something for my sister. I want to save her. She peered down at Maria, sprawled on the floor. She'd object to me going, I'm sure of that. But I want to do what I can. To do things my way. No one tried to contradict her this time. If she's willing to take the risk, then there are things the rest of you can do too. It was Kanan again. Let's hear it, Kana replied. He squared his shoulders. He was of the same mind as Hitomi. He couldn't just do nothing and leave it all on Kanan. After everything he'd been through, he wanted to stick with this case until the very end. I'll apprehend Alphard at the rendezvous and demand the password from him. Kanan offered the suggestion as if it were a simple task. That lets you get what you want without putting Hitomi in danger. Kano let out a sigh. Hold on, he said. Even if we do arrest him, how are we going to get him to cough up the password? We don't have time to drag him off to an interrogation room. And besides, he doesn't strike me as the sort to offer a confession that easily. There are ways, Kanan said. Once Alphard has made contact with Hitomi, call my cell phone. Hitomi tilted her head. Call you? I have plenty of information Alphard might want to bargain for. I can negotiate with him directly. Kano considered Kanan's proposal. I see. So we'll try both options. Attempt to hack the password at the lab, and also try negotiating with Alphard. That gives us 2 chances. With that tiny ray of hope, Hitomi's face brightened some. We'll split into 2 groups. One for the lab, and one for Shibuya Station, Kanan said. Let's exchange phone numbers so we can stay in touch when the time comes. The group quickly shared contact info as suggested. Hitomi and Kanan called one another's phones to be sure. Hitomi's cheerful ringtone felt out of place, but also somehow soothing. A fragrance of normalcy in the midst of crisis. Guess we're all set then, Hitomi said, looking down the LCD screen. Her expression turned apologetic. I'm sorry, Kanan, for having to keep putting things on you. Hey, Kanan replied. Don't worry about it. Okay, now I guess I should call my father. Hitomi called Kenji Osoa, and here's the keep out. The final keep out for Kenji's block. I hope. on his cell, asking him to let Maria and Kanan into the lab. Kano leaned in to whisper into Kanan's ear, "Are you sure you're okay with this?" "With what?" "I know that you're after Alphard. Are you sure you want to go to the lab and not... Right now, I want to save Maria. That's all." Her tone was as curt and mechanical as ever, but there was a fierce gleam of determination in her eyes. Maria was clearly someone very special to her. "All right," Kano replied. "Leave Alphard to me." He thumped himself on the chest. He'd succeed this time, no matter what the odds. Kano could scarcely recall the whirlwind of events that had brought him here. He'd somehow survived a dozen disasters. Even now, a dear friend was in the hospital, at risk of dying. There were times when he'd been ready to give up. And yet, at the end of it all, here he was. His opponent was an international terrorist. No matter how you looked at it, that wasn't a matchup for a mere detective. But I'm going to do it anyway. Rumi, Shizuo, Sasayama, and Detective Tatano. I'm going to take down Alphard and save Maria Osawa's life. Just you watch and see. To be continued. Alright, all we need to do now is finish up Osawa for this current block. So, we'll be doing that in the next episode. Till then, this is the Gamer Girl, signing off.